Welcome to the Find Me the Money podcast. Today, our episode is Amicable Doesn't Mean Simple with Tracy Moore Grant. Tracy has represented clients and practiced exclusively in the area of family law since 2002. She's the founding partner of the law firm Patterson Moore Butler in Georgia, and in 2019, she founded the Amicable Divorce Network. Tracy's a passionate believer that parties, not the court, are in the best position to come up with solutions to their family law issues. Amicable divorce is a low-conflict, out-of-court process designed to help the parties negotiate, reach a resolution, and move forward efficiently and with a child-focused approach. Tracy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Also, Tracy.
Yes, of course, the Tracy and Tracy show. I've been on a couple of Tracy and Tracy shows before. I don't like saying it until the end. Where can people find you after they are done listening to this fantastic interview that we're going to have?
So there's two ways. One is to go to amicableddivorcenetwork.com, click the membership directory, and you will find me listed as an attorney in Georgia, which are some subsets that you can click there. Or you can go to pattersonmoorebutler.com, which is my website, and that has all of my office information there as well.
Awesome. Well, as you know, the Find Me the Money podcast is all about money and divorce. But I like to branch out a little bit to keep it interesting and to address some of the other issues that are important to people who are getting divorced. And certainly in any kind of divorce, money is an important issue. And you and I had talked about that there can be really complicated money issues in divorces, but the divorce can still be done through the Amicable Divorce Network, right? Even when it's complicated. So that's why we're talking about amicable doesn't mean simple.
It does not. No, we deal with all of the same issues that people have in what we would call a traditional divorce in the court system. We use all of the same professionals, forensic accountant, small business valuation, whatever it is that we might need in that case. We just use those professionals outside of the court system. And generally speaking, a case would use one of the professionals, whereas in a contested divorce, you might have, for example, two small business valuation experts who are great professionals who are very good at what they do, but you're double paying for that work. So we try to really streamline the complicated issues and get to the heart of the matter that'll help us resolve the case.
Well, let's figure out what we're talking about first. We hear certain legal terms a lot, and I want to make sure that our audience knows exactly what we're talking about. So can you tell us what the difference is between a contested divorce and what an uncontested divorce is?
Sure, because the public always uses the word uncontested incorrectly. I bet I get calls to my office every single day where parties are saying, I have or I want an uncontested divorce. Now, to a legal professional, an uncontested divorce means that the parties have sat down and settled all of their issues. The negotiation has been between the two parties. They want somebody to help them draw up the agreement, make sure it gets through the court system. That is what it is to a legal professional. Now, when people are calling my office and saying, I want an uncontested divorce, 99% of the time what they're saying actually is, I want to resolve my case. I don't know how. I need help with these issues. And so that's where amicable sort of falls in the middle there. Like, you guys want a resolution, but you need help. You need experts. You might need a mediation. You might not. And then you have the third type of divorce, which we call traditional or contested, which is what everybody thinks of. Somebody runs to the courthouse and files. The other person is served. You're on the court's timeline, doing extensive discovery and depositions and all sorts of different things, which in my opinion, most of the time, 95% of the time, statistically end up being not needed and a waste of money.
So uncontested, we agree about everything. We agree what's happening with the kids, what's happening with the money, and we just need to get the divorce legal. Contested divorce is we're arguing about things. We're letting a divorce court judge decide some issues for us. And then somewhere in between is a mediated divorce, an amicable divorce, where you may not agree on everything today, but we're having a process for you to come to agreement on it. Would that be accurate?
That you've nailed it, Tracy. That was perfect. Yeah. So most people are in between where they don't want to go to court. And I say they don't want to set money on fire. That's what I think people do in a contested litigation. They want to be reasonable. They want to save costs. They want to put their kids first, but they don't know how. Most lay people don't know how to calculate child support. They don't know how to divide assets to maximize tax impact. They don't, know how to properly structure the settlement for their home and a refinance and things of that nature. They need help to do it right. And they might need to negotiate. A lot of parties are unable to sit down with their spouse because it's just too upsetting. They just aren't knowledgeable about what needs to be done. So very few people can actually do uncontested start to finish. It's just too much for people. And it is a professional legal process where parties should get help. So it is always good to have a professional look that over. And if they need additional assistance, need to exchange some documents, might need a mediation, we design the divorce process for what they need and what they can afford.
Well, I'm a huge fan of doing these divorces outside of divorce court. That contested divorce, as you said, light money on fire because it gets really expensive. You can put a kid through college for what people are spending on their divorces. But also, what I like to tell people is think about this. You have a judge who doesn't know you, doesn't know your family, making decisions about that. Now, of course, if you can't get your ex to agree to anything, you might have to let a judge decide and make a court order and say, you are going to sell the family home and split the money or whatever. But if you can avoid having that stranger make those decisions for your family, I always think it's better. Let us decide for our family.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the statistics show us that 95% of divorces settle outside the court system. Yet when people are going that contested route, filing in the court system, going through that song and dance, they're preparing for a trial that never happens. Most cases do resolve in mediation. They do resolve between the attorney sending letters back and forth or the parties coming to an agreement that works for them. And so it is important to know that everybody has the opportunity to settle their case outside the court system. And that is actually very normal. It is quite abnormal statistically that the judge is ever seeing your face or deciding your case. But particularly in cases with complicated assets, some judges just don't understand. When I litigated, for many years and would present complicated issues to judges, some of them had a financial mind and they understood the evidence and could make a good decision. But a vast number of them, simply their eyes glossed over, they didn't understand the information, and the client had paid for a ton of money to have an expert evaluate something that ultimately the judge just didn't get. And sometimes they just don't have the time to get it. They're dealing with a ton of cases. So the more complicated the case, the more expert care and time and attention it needs. And actually, it is the worst kind of case to take to a judge. Because you then have to educate the judge on the forensic accounting or the small business evaluation or the stock options or different things like that. And a lot of judges don't come from a financial background. Most don't. They may have come from a personal injury background or been a criminal attorney before becoming a judge. So they just can't wrap their brain around it.
And it's hard as a forensic accountant myself to tell a client, you're going to spend $25,000 on these services from me so that we can figure out what has happened to the money and where it is and potentially how it should be divided. But we don't know how much of my words the judge is going to listen to or how carefully they're going to consider it. That's really hard to tell a client that they're going to make that investment and you just don't know. Whereas if you're doing your divorce outside the court system and trying to do a mediated divorce or something like that, we can, number one, keep some costs down. But number two, we can decide how important this information is and leverage it in those negotiations, right?
Exactly. I mean, in the court system, you are very limited on time. You're limited on evidence. Everything is hurry, hurry, hurry. And then the stranger judge to your case just might not get it. When we're in the amicable context, When we have complicated assets, often it's me and the other attorney, sometimes the clients as well. We have conference calls or meetings with the expert. We can ask questions to fully understand their opinion, how they have arrived at this, as opposed to depositions, which is what you would pay for in a contested case. And we all have a conversation about this information. And then we use that information to settle the case and to go forward with our negotiations. And so it is just a very streamlined process, but you have more time and care to actually understand and evaluate the information with your expert.
So tell us what an amicable divorce is and what that process is. And it doesn't just mean a friendly divorce. I mean, when I say an amicable divorce, I'm talking about your brand, the Amicable Divorce Network. What is that kind of divorce?
Okay, so first, it's important to know that every single person in our membership directory has been vetted. We are the only organization in the entire world that vets divorce industry professionals for being experienced, resolution-focused, and engaging in fair billing practices. And those three criteria should be important to anybody going through a divorce. So if they're not in our database, I cannot speak to them. But you can certainly send us some good eggs if you found them out there. So first, if you're interested in amicable divorce, you would meet with one of our professionals, typically an attorney first. Sometimes people start with a CDFA or they reach out to a different member. But if you reach out to the attorneys first, each party to the divorce will need to hire somebody in the Amicable Divorce Network. It's sort of like medical insurance, right? You got to be in the plan. And so both attorneys have been trained on the amicable process, are vetted, and have access to our Amicable Divorce Network technology platform. So you can't do an amicable divorce without two amicable professionals guiding that process. And so then the attorneys meet with their clients, see what their needs are, see what their timeline is, and we design the process for the parties. What experts do they need, if any? Perhaps they're saying, you know what, we just want some help, but we have to get this divorce over quickly. We can't afford experts, and the attorneys take that information to design their divorce. And then we have the other end of the spectrum where we have celebrity clients where it's very important to them to have their process be private, where they have the time and attention and care to value their assets. They have a high asset case, and they really want to take care with making sure that this is resolved outside of the court system. And they may have very complicated assets. And so we have the whole range of spectrum of for complicated to, really not complicated, and we just handle it all. And then when the case is resolved, at that point, the parties file it as an uncontested divorce in the court system, sometimes under seal if they have privacy concerns. And then we move forward with granting that divorce. And that's the only time that the court is involved, is to rubber stamp that document at the end.
So we hear a lot of terms in the world of divorce. Is this the same thing as a mediated divorce or a collaborative divorce, or is this something different than those two terms? Because I know a mediated divorce and a collaborative divorce are two separate things, right?
That's correct. So this would be a third separate thing. So mediation, in my opinion, is a process that you can use to resolve your differences. So in the amicable process, if the parties just, through offers between the attorneys, need more help to reach a resolution, we would schedule a mediation. And then if the parties can't still resolve their issues, we would schedule an arbitration. And the difference is, in a mediation, the parties are being guided to negotiate and reach that agreement with help of their counsel. In an arbitration, the arbitrator sits like a private judge and would make a decision. So let's say the parties just can't resolve the issue of child support, can't agree. We would take those same facts to an arbitrator and ask them to resolve the case so it can just move forward to a conclusion, which would save the parties about 18 months of court time by just scheduling that arbitration, and is very streamlined for that. Now, the difference with collaborative is that in collaborative, none of the parties have confidentiality with their legal counsel or their coach or mental health professionals. And their idea is that everybody is speaking very candidly about your case. And so that really is what drives the resolution. So we are actually a confidential process. So when my client contacts me, that is confidential. And so we maintain that confidentiality. Also different than collaborative, we have vetted all of our professionals for actually having a resolution mindset. Whereas collaborative, anybody can take the training and they're deemed to be collaborative. We vet them for that mindset before they can take our training. And third is with collaborative, they have a mandatory pod of people, so to speak. So you have to have a coach, you have to have a mental health professional, you have to have a financial professional. Not everybody can afford that or needs it. So we really customize that team for the needs and finances of the parties, and our team members can be bigger than that. So we have certified divorce lending professionals, we have wellness professionals, yoga, Reiki healers, different things like that who might get brought in. We have different mental health specialists for different areas that the parties might need. We can even do a custody evaluation and have an expert do that. We have addiction specialists. We deal with a lot of addiction issues. And so we can pull in the right people for the family to get their case resolved.
Well, I know that divorce lawyers get a really bad rap, especially if you follow content on social media. I mean, I get these comments on my accounts all the time about how divorce lawyers and other professionals are just trying to run up fees for people. They want to keep your divorce going longer than it needs to. Now, I know that there's a bad egg here and there, but I've been working on divorces for 20 years, and the attorneys that I've worked with are not the ones who are keeping a divorce going, right? They are litigating, they're following the procedures, doing the things, but they're not trying to line their own pockets with these divorces. Nonetheless, if someone thinks that that is what divorce lawyers do, I think something like the Amicable Divorce Network is great for them because, like you said, you have attorneys in your network that are settlement minded and resolution minded, and they are committed to not keeping your divorce going any longer than it has to go, right?
Absolutely correct. They are vetted by their peers for being resolution focused. And so when we have a new applicant, we send it to their peers and say, what do you think about this person? What is your relationship with them? What has your experience been? And, attorneys are pretty candid about other attorneys. And so I think that that's a really great way to get feedback. So if any of our attorneys or other professionals in the network, it could be really anybody, is found to not have a resolution focus, our membership board can remove them. So we actually have a process for removing people if a bad egg gets in. So it's something that we hold very dear, and all of our members are very protective of, are that we have the right professionals acting the right way, because that is what we firmly believe actually really helps people get to the end. And I always get the feedback from people of, well, then you make less money. So why, they're very skeptical of it, because then they're like, well, then you would make less money. And I think what people need to understand is if I have cases moving quicker and more efficiently, I can handle more cases. I have happier clients who refer me more clients. And for me personally, I enjoy who I work with, as opposed to some of the family law attorneys out there that make my blood boil. I work with colleagues who, were really hunkering down on a problem and trying to figure it out for these parties and, get them to a resolution. And that's more satisfying for me as a professional.
Okay, so back to the title of this episode, Amicable Doesn't Mean Simple. I think people assume that a messy situation, or even one where we're disagreeing a lot, can't be done through something like the Amicable Divorce Network. Can it?
Absolutely. Any issue that people would have in the court system can be handled outside the court system. And the statistics support that. 95% of cases reach a resolution, never see the judge's face, never go to the courthouse. And so whatever the problem is, we have identified a professional to help with that problem. So let's say they have incredibly complicated assets, a small business, they've commingled their personal finances with the business. I would actually argue that the more complicated the case, the better fitted it is for Amicable, because we can really take the time to pull those strings apart, see what's going on here. Whereas when you file in the court system, and we have a jurisdiction here where you have to go to court every 30 days and explain what's going on with the case.
Wow.
Pay your attorney to go to that meeting, to that status conference, to drive to town, to do all these different things. that's a high cost. Whereas we don't have to do, any of that. We can, put our own timeline on things and really take the care to figure out what's going on in the situation and how to help it. So we really have the ability to take care of the whole family while also maintaining confidentiality and arguing for what our client wants. But you can negotiate in a respectful way and get the case done. And it really is a much more efficient process for the parties and has less conflict. When you're not getting those nasty emails, those nasty letters from the other attorney, it really keeps the temperature down.
I love it. So you know that I love talking about money issues, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have an example of a divorce with some messy money issues that went through the Amicable Divorce Network process that you could share with us?
Sure. So obviously I'm not going to use any names, but I had a case and it was sort of what I touched on earlier. They had a small business. They had both worked at the small business, but the wife also worked independently and had vested and unvested stock options that were sort of triggering over time and had a pension from a previous employer. And so with the small business, they had not done the best job of keeping their personal separate from their business. They were paying all kinds of expenses out of that business account. And so we did have to use a forensic accountant to really pull out those expenses. What was family? What was business? Use a small business valuator to say, what is the value of this business? They go through their different models to show us because the husband was wanting to keep the business. We also had to have the stock options looked at and valued as far as how we're going to handle that. What is the vesting schedule? These are things I know nothing about. So I definitely always hire an expert to tell me what's going on and also to value the pension as well. So they really hit all the highlights there. But the other good thing about that as well is because I'm telling my professionals who have been vetted in the network, hey, this is a non-litigation case. You're not going to be called to a deposition. You're not going to be called to court. That they are like, great, let me charge you a reduced rate because that really makes things easier for me. If you're going to have me do these 3 different tasks, I'm going to give you more of a deal on this bundle. And so in that case, we had 2 different professionals, financial professionals who performed what I would consider to be 4 different complex financial tasks. We had meetings with the professionals. We asked questions. They did reports and paperwork just like they would in a normal case. And then we used the information that they provided to us to help those parties reach an agreement in mediation and get their case finalized. As compared to a traditional case where they would have had potentially 8 different financial professionals involved and paying a ton of money for the same work. So we were really able to streamline things there in that complicated case.
That is an awesome example to illustrate what you do. So I want to remind our listeners that amicable doesn't necessarily refer to the people who are getting divorced because you might be having a lot of conflict with your ex. It might be why you're getting divorced. But it is about amicable professionals, the divorce attorneys, the experts, and how they conduct themselves in the process of divorce. So tell us again where to find you.
So you can always email me at info, at amicableddivorcenetwork.com if you have any questions about the process or our professionals. You can also find me at amicableddivorcenetwork.com, listed under the Georgia Attorneys and Mediators, or at pattersonmoorebutler.com. That's my law firm in Georgia.
Tracy, thank you so much for being with me today. Awesome episode with wonderful information to help people get through their divorces in a much easier and more cost-effective way.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate it.